Welcome, my name's Michael. Thank you for joining me today and deciding to come along for a discussion of our topic, which is dialectical thinking and its benefits. It's a very big topic and there's so much I can't cover, so I'm going to name a few things that I'm not going to cover. I'm not going to cover the history of philosophy from Socrates to Kant to Hegel and so forth, and I'm not going to cover developments in the field of cognitive development from Piaget to Kurt Fischer to Michael Bassages. Not going to do that. What I'm going to do is focus on as clear a definition or an understanding of what dialectical thinking is and point out how it works and what its benefits are. If you haven't heard of dialectical thinking before, I'm going to make a statement that is rare for me. I don't usually hype things like this, but it could change your life. It could change the way you see things, the way you make decisions, the way you conduct your life. It's that significant. If you are familiar with dialectical thinking, this may be a review for you, but it just may be that I will have some perspectives or some ways to talk about it that will enhance what you already know. So join me. So, dialectical thinking, what is it? It's to take multiple perspectives, to not be stuck with one view. Sometimes it's called an alternative to black and white thinking, either or thinking. It's both and thinking, particularly when it comes to binaries, to paradoxical opposites, rather than pick one side and see everything from that side and argue against the other side. It's considering that both sides have some truth. The Chinese have a symbol for this that most people are familiar with. It's the yin-yang symbol, which has both these opposites with each other contained within each. And this is a basic way of seeing and going with the flow of life. The Buddhists also have a notion called the middle path, which is originally a way to navigate between the extremes of self-indulgence and self-deprivation to cultivate a spiritual life. I came across, and it's probably a common image that people have seen to illustrate what dialectical thinking is, but I'm going to share it here. I'll put this up. It's up there, I think. This is a way to see that we can take a single perspective on something and not see what's really there. This is the view of a cylinder. One view is from the end, and what we see at the end, the cylinder behind it, is a circle. If we look at it from the side, what we see is a rectangle. We're right. That's what we see. That's there. That's a circle. That's a rectangle. You can argue for that. You can measure it. You can describe its dimensions and feel pretty right about that. But you're not seeing the whole picture. And if you look at a cylinder from the corner and you see both the circle and the rectangle, you see that those are part of a larger whole. In fact, a three-dimensional whole. It has a whole other quality to it. There's a pretty stark truth, right? When you look at that image, you can see that. It's not quite as starkly obvious in our everyday lives when we're taking a single perspective and seeing what we think is true, that there are other valid perspectives, and that if we add them together, we get a much more inclusive, comprehensive view of the whole of a situation. So, dialectical thinking takes the multiple perspectives of the whole and includes them, but transcends them for a greater understanding. In the field of psychotherapy, there is an application that's been around for quite a while now called dialectical behavioral therapy, which was developed by Marsha Linehan. And she actually included the word dialectical in the name of the therapy because it was so central to her way of approaching working with people. And she identified several dialectics that are really beneficial to resolve in our thinking, in our way of managing ourselves and our relationships with others. In terms of emotions, she identified we have a rational mind and an emotional mind. And we can go one way or the other. We can try to figure out everything rationally, or we can go simply on our feelings. She suggested that wise mind is the greater whole that includes both of those, and that our way of understanding ourselves and navigating the world ought to include an equal inclusion of both of those capacities. There are a few other dialectics that she talks about, and her treatment involves educating people in applying these. Another is self-acceptance and change. So on the one hand, we completely accept ourselves as we are. On the other hand, there's things we need to learn and grow into and improve, and that's true as well. They're both true. She also talks about distress tolerance and self-regulation. So that on the one hand, when we're upset by something, the encouragement is to be with that feeling, to tolerate it, to build capacity to not fall apart in the midst of stress and distress. On the other hand, there are things we can do to soothe ourselves. I think she calls it self-soothing. So these are just a few of the dialectics that she works with in her form of therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy. There's another application in integral theory or integral psychotherapy, and it's something I've talked about in several other videos in terms of body, mind, relationship, and environment being important, the four important areas to focus attention and care in our lives. Actually, these four areas are the product of two dialectics. One of the dialectics is the individual and the collective. So there's a single person, me or you, and then there's our group, whether it's our family or our extended family, our colleagues at work, or humanity in general. There's the collective. And then there's the interior and the exterior. The interior has to do with subjective experience, thoughts and feelings, what we feel in our experience through our mind. And then there's the exterior, which is physicality, things that actually have substance, the objective world. So we have these two dialectics, interior and exterior, and individual and collective. So if we put them on axes and we make a cross, we get four areas. In integral theory, these are called the quadrants. In the upper left quadrant, we have the interior of the individual. That means my mind, or your mind, or any individual's interior subjective experience. We have in the upper right-hand quadrant, we have the exterior of the individual, my body, your body, anybody's body, a single person's body. In the lower left, we have the interior of the collective. This is a fascinating area, I think. It's where our minds overlap. It's where we have a shared or intersubjective understanding with each other. As I'm talking right now and you're understanding my words, there's a way in which we're occupying a similar area subjectively. It's where communication happens, where relationships happen, where we can understand one another. We can have agreements or disagreements. It's a big territory. All of these are big territories. I'm just going to name them. In the bottom right-hand corner, we have the exterior of the collective, which is the world around us. For human beings, our collective exterior includes our physical infrastructure, buildings, roads, communication technology, basically our whole physical civilization, but it also includes nature, the planet, everything. Instead of trying to go through that explanation, I'm doing it here. I'm not probably going to do it again. It's a lot more accessible and immediate if I just call it the mind, the body, relationships, and environment. We all understand that. We all understand that if you're a person, you have a mind and a body, you have relationships, and you exist in an environment. That's good enough. But now you know the backstory, how dialectical thinking provides the foundation for seeing those four areas. Integral theory talks about quadrant absolutism, which is when we privilege one of these four areas over the others. And we think that it provides all the information, or almost all the information we need to analyze a problem and to come up with a solution. One example might be the medical model when it's applied to psychological problems or psychiatry. That mental illness is a brain disease, that it's what's happening physiologically, neurologically in our brains, and that if we find the right drug, we can remedy that. This may be totally absent from a view of the person's psychology, from their interpersonal relationships, from the culture they're embedded in, from the socioeconomic reality that they're living in, and try to come up with a pill to relieve their distress. This is one example of a quadrant absolutism. It could go the other way, though, and there may be that all psychological problems are constrained to understanding the mind and internal psychological dynamics, when in fact maybe sometimes there is a hormonal imbalance or some other physiological thing going on, or a cultural or socioeconomic thing going on. This is just a couple examples of how quadrant absolutism can function in the world of psychotherapy, but it can function in the world of politics or business or anything, where we have a preferred perspective, a bias, and we ignore, dismiss, or minimize the relevance of perspectives from these other quadrants. And it compromises our ability to address problems. So, what are some of the benefits of dialectical thinking? I've suggested some already, but let me go through and name them again and add a few. Problem solving. I think it enhances our ability to solve problems because by expanding the number of perspectives we take, we have a better understanding of the whole situation. And in that understanding, we're more likely to develop solutions or responses to the problem that are comprehensive and addressing multiple angles. It can help us regulate our emotions. I made mention of this in the dialectical behavioral therapy's wise mind idea, but it turns out that anxiety and depression can be fostered by single perspectives, by black and white thinking, by reducing everything to some bleak notion of what may happen in the future or what is happening now or what always happened. A single perspective on ourselves, seeing ourselves as all bad or seeing other people as all bad, it tends to cause us distressing emotions. And if we're able to think dialectically, we soften some of that. We see the world in more shades of gray. Dialectical thinking, when we apply it to ourselves, gives us a greater self-understanding, greater self-awareness and self-understanding. We can see ourselves from multiple perspectives. Sometimes we're virtuous, sometimes we're not. Sometimes we're strong, sometimes we're not. We don't have to hold on to a rigid view of how we are and how we always have been and how we must always be. There's more nuance and subtlety and complexity in our ability to see ourselves and to see other people. We don't reduce people into good or bad so quickly. This then also enhances our ability to listen to people, hear them fully. Even if we disagree with them, we can still hear them. Perhaps they have a perspective that's one that we tend to neglect. And on the surface, it may be that there's a way it's expressed that we do disagree with, but there may be a value inside of it that we could recognize, and so we can listen. So it can enhance our interpersonal effectiveness and ability to connect with people and resolve conflicts. Well, I think those benefits, and I've only briefly touched on them, are significant. Those are all really important ways that being able to think dialectically can enhance our lives and bring benefits to our experience. I do want to mention a few other dialectics that we can be aware of and try to find some balance in. So I'll pose it as questions. Should we be orderly and follow rules in our lives? Or should we be spontaneous and free in how we do things? Rule-based or spontaneity-based? Should we pick one? Should we bring them together? Should we be primarily or exclusively concerned with individual rights and freedoms? Or should we emphasize that we all have responsibility to each other, a duty to live in a way that considers the needs of others and go out of our way sometimes to be of help to others? You can see how you could choose one or the other, or emphasize one or the other and neglect the other side. Should we have boundaries? Should we protect our space, our things, ourselves, our time, our energy from others who may want to lay a claim on it? Sure. But is there a place for generosity? Is there a place for relaxing our boundaries and sharing our time and our space and our energy with others? Even when part of us would prefer not to. You get the idea. Perhaps you can come up with a variety of other dialectics, kind of polar or paradoxical opposites, and see what you think. Do you have a preference? Another dialectic in therapy that I've seen over the years is, should a therapist focus on the past or the present? Should we excavate the person's early childhood memories to find the root of the trauma and the distress? Or should we focus on today, what's happening today? And there are forms of therapy will make one or the other choice on that. Turns out both are true. Both, just like the circle and the rectangle, they're both important. But maybe they can be integrated and synthesized, and the past and the present can be dealt with. Well, I might be rambling if I carried on from here. Dialectical thinking. It's an alternative to black and white thinking. It's an alternative to taking a single or very limited set of perspectives and including more perspectives and finding the truth in even opposing perspectives and transcending those and including them into a greater whole of understanding, which guides our emotional life, guides our thinking and our perceptions of what we're even seeing, and enhances our problem solving and our relationships and so much. So give it a go. The next time you find yourself up against something you disagree with, see if you can take that perspective, find some truth in it, without abandoning your own, without, the circle doesn't have to just become a rectangle in its view, or vice versa. How do we rectify them and bring them together? Okay, enough. So, thanks for joining me. Thanks for coming all the way to the end of this video. If you like this, please give it a like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, share this video with somebody you think might benefit from it. And below in the description, you'll find a description of Attention Bazaar, my online store, and a link so that you can go and browse and find something that is useful and important to you. Until next time, bye-bye.